Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today, I want to talk about the question, how do I date a strong, independent woman? I just want to thank the person that sent me this question. I appreciate it. But before I get started, I do want to say I think I take a little bit of objection to the word strong. In conversation with the friend who texted me this question, you know, it ended up being that what he meant by strong was successful in their career driven, or ahead of them in terms of career success. His intention wasn't obviously bad. I just think, in general, we need to get away from using strong with career driven or success. I don't think strength and career need to be correlated. Someone who hasn't found as much career success shouldn't be viewed as weak. There are plenty of stay-at-home moms who are strong women. I would instead think about rephrasing it like, what are some tips to dating a professionally successful or career-driven woman? So, given that background, that's how I'm going to address it. Um, you know, I would say the first thing I would say is, in some ways, there's probably a high likelihood that this question is being asked because you, as the guy, and again, I'm gonna answer this question from a straight male perspective, given that's who I am and that's the perspective I can provide. But you, as the male, feel self-conscious or insecure either from a financial perspective or a success perspective. And I have a lot of empathy for that. I think that comes from the historical perspective of the roles of men and women in society. For a long time, males have been the breadwinner or the one expected to be more successful in their career. That all being said, part of our job in society is to unlearn the thinking that isn't correct and evolutionize our thinking. Um, so I'd first start off by saying we need to start getting rid of this thought. This idea that men should always make more money or have more success than their wives is antiquated. Um, and in fact, just in general, I don't think we should ever compare ourselves with our significant others in terms of career, in terms of success. Obviously, yes, we need to understand their job, their lifestyle, their motivation into into that career. But comparing ourselves isn't necessary. I think the focus really needs to be on the partnership, the relationship. That's what matters more than what it is that we do for our jobs. In conjunction with, that's my first piece of advice. In conjunction with number one, I would also safe to say that you as this male probably need to stop worrying and caring about other people's judgments. Um, and I say this because, you know, some of the people asking this question to me or to whoever, it might not even come from their own beliefs. It might just be they're worried about what their friends and family think. And to that, I would say, who cares? Let's just say one of your friends thinks it's funny that your wife or your girlfriend makes more money than you or is more successful than you. Like, why does that affect you? Do you really care about the opinion of someone who is, backward in their thinking? I mean, I don't see the reason for that to affect your psyche. I do think if you're struggling with it, I have empathy for that. And so I think, really ask yourself the following questions. What's the purpose of your relationship, right? And if it's, to find a life partner who loves you, wants to grow together, wants to have fun with you, as long as you're happy with the person you're with, why do the opinions of others matter? So that would be my number 2 piece of advice. In terms of the actual dating aspect, the first thing I would say is don't try to change her. Compromises are a part of relationships. However, changing one's authentic self really is not part of healthy relationships. If she's a driven woman and that's a part of her identity, let that be a part of her identity. Don't try to change her to be less ambitious or something like that, because then you'll be changing who she is at her core. Accept her for who she is and see if the two of you can work just based on a relationship aspect. I guess the question there is, how do you know if it can work? And so that's where my 4th piece of advice comes in, is think about, what do you need from your relationship? And I think ask, theoretically, if you were to, write out from scratch the perfect partner, what is it that you want from a partner in terms of whatever it is that you value? That might be commitment. That might be understanding of certain values. That might be religion. That might be race. That might be whatever that is. In this case, like, some questions that might be relevant are, what do I want from my partner in terms of commitment on the weekdays and weekends? You could even go as practical as, like, how do we want to split cooking duties, And now take the context of the person you're dating, so they're, in this case, clearly career driven, and understand that they might work more, or they might be more focused on their career as their number 1 priority. How then does that affect you and what you wanted from your theoretical best fit partner? Right? And so, if you answered, like, the commitment of time question as, I'd love to spend 7 to 9:30 with them on weekdays and then have our weekends completely open to spend with each other. Can that person commit to that? Obviously, if they fit that criteria, great. If they can't, can you compromise on whatever it is that they can give? So, let's say on the cooking question, you'd want it to be 50-50 or close to that. But given her schedule, it's probably going to be 75-25 you. Is that something you can compromise on? Those types of questions only you can answer. That's a very simple one that, hopefully isn't, maybe it is a deal breaker, but, like, maybe you're like, all right, no, I don't mind because I love cooking, or that's not a big time commitment, so that's not a big deal. I would say one caveat to that is, if you do accept whatever the compromise is, so say, 5 days out of the week you're doing cooking and then 2 days out of the week she's doing it, you can't now hold guilt on them or resentment for them based on this arrangement. You're accepting this arrangement. You can't have it both ways. Either don't accept their arrangement and choose to date someone else, or do accept it and be happy with it. Don't accept it and then complain. You know what the situation is. As I said, you have your choices. The 5th thing I would say is be mindful and empathetic to the effort they're giving. So let's just say they're working 10 to 12 hours a day for 5 days a week. So maybe in terms of weekdays, they can only give, an hour, but it's fully present hour. And then weekends, they're, free, so a lot more present. And say you as a guy, you have a much better work-life balance, maybe in terms of you can work, you only have to work like closer to 40 to 50 hours a week. One thing I want to say in this is, if for her she has 3 hours of free time on the weekdays and is spending one of those with you fully present, you know, think about her ratio of free time to time spent with you. Because let's say she had better, work life balance, and, instead of 3 hours, had 5 hours of free time. And was like technically with you for 3 hours, but really was only present 1.5, like, of the 3 hours. My point here is really just about hours spent doesn't equal quality time. And, like, you guys could be technically spending 3 hours together, but if you're both in separate rooms on your phones, then it's really not 3 hours of quality time. And so, I guess my point here is basically understand what your partner is giving. If they are giving, 1 hour of truly present time out of 3 hours, that's 33% of their free time. Whereas if they're giving 1.5 hours truly present out of 5 hours of free time, that's only 30% of their time. You know, without getting into all these crazy calculations, I think ultimately the reality is you're a team, and you should want both of you to be happy individually, healthy, successful, and all individually and as a team together. And for me, I think if those things can align, it shouldn't be hard to date someone who is career first oriented person. Again, I'm really someone that's focused on the relationship aspect and how much they're giving there. For me, any scenarios can work with dating a career-driven woman. Whether that's you're a career-driven man, you want to be a stay-at-home dad, you're just, you have a more normal work-life balance, but you're still, working full-time. Any of that can fit. I think a lot of people give excuses to being opposed to people who are career-driven. Again, you have to understand the identity of a person, understand there is sacrifice there. They're going to be committed to something for, but in their free time, how much are they committing? I.e., the relationship aspect is really what you need to judge. And as long as the relationship is good, that's all that matters. This is a bit of a tangent, but like going back to the beginning of what we talked about, understand whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whenever, the at-home dad, the stay-at-home dad, will be a much bigger and much more normalized part of society. Our society, even though I don't like this term, will get to a point where the woman being the alpha, as I said in the beginning, I don't like that terminology within relationships, but for the context of how people view it now, since, the alphas are the men right now, I guess, in society, there's going to be a point where, it might get to a point where 50% of stay-at-home parents are dads. And, that level of thinking is hard for people. But get to it. That's the beautiful thing about equality. And, I just think it's just about unlearning. So I hope this helped. Obviously, the original question was tips on dating a strong, independent woman. Again, gave those 5 tips of mine. Um, if you're someone that's dating a strong, independent woman, quote unquote, obviously I prefer different language, but whatever the language is that you're using, and there's some pieces of advice that you have that I didn't say, or if you're, a career-driven, woman, and you'd like to say some pieces of advice for the men out there, let me know. Happy to do a follow-up to this. Any comments or feedback that you have, feel free to comment or message me. And thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it.